afternoon, and welcome to the 2017 campaign debate. I'm Jace Thorson, this is Tessa Reed, and this is Alden Taylor. We will be your moderators this afternoon. We're looking forward to an informative hour. Each candidate will receive questions in a random order determined by coin flip. For all questions, candidates will have 45 seconds to respond. On the surprise question, candidates will be given 30 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to respond. We hope to get to as many questions as we can, so we ask the audience to hold the applause until the end. A reminder that the election will take place on Tuesday. Don't forget to respond to our email to cast your ballot. We will begin with the candidates' introductions.
All candidates have been given 1 minute for their opening statement. Even though we have asked to hold applause until the end, we will accept applause after each opening statement. With that being said, let's meet our candidates. Our first candidate is Jamison, a Republican. We ask them to give their opening statement at this time.
On behalf of Jamison, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background on him. He's a 47-year-old male from Iowa, and with a father of 2 kids with his lovely wife Tegan. He's a former Marine, and some of the issues you'll hear us point on include his stance on pro-life with no exceptions. He's pro-gun and he's protecting the Second Amendment. We want to secure our borders for the immigration, for the American people, and then we are strictly against the physician assistance of suicide.
Our second candidate is Justin McLovin. Way to go. Our second candidate is Justin McLovin, a Democrat. They have requested to use a video as their opening statement.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. I'm a representative for Justin McLovin, and I was just trying to make sure the school is up to good standards. Who wrote this? Who wrote this lie? Better. Now, Justin McLovin is pro-choice and pro-physician-assisted suicide. He is also for DACA because it has been proven to help boost the economy.
Whoa.
Oh my job, and just McLovin America. But don't take it from me. Take it from these darling miniature Americans.
Just McLovin America.
Our third candidate is Lando Free, a Republican. They have also chosen to use a video as their opening statement.
Land of free for you and me. Land of free for you and me. The land of free. He's 43, has a family. Land of free for you and me. The land of free. He wants to save the babies he has to on his own. Let's give them all a chance to have their rights be known. For all of those in need, the land of free. He's a full of CBD, so you can live and free. Land of free for you and me. Land of free for you and me. The land of free. DACA will be staying, but amnesty is fading. He's increasing at the border to keep the U.S. border. The second you believe, then Lando will achieve in keeping gun rights free. All for you and me, Lando free. For you and me, Lando free. For you and me, Lando free. Lando free.
Thank you for opening statement. Thank you for your opening statements, candidates. Let's begin our debate. We will begin with the question on the topic of healthcare. Each of you will have 45 seconds to respond. Lando Free, you won the coin toss, so you will go first. In your view, should healthcare in the United States be treated as a right or a privilege? If a fundamental right, how should it be governed so as to avoid abuse? If a privilege, how should it be structured to assure access for those who lack the means to pay for it?
Thank you for the question. Lando Free believes that it is a privilege, which means it's a choice for the people for what insurance they'd like to buy, and this would help create competition between insurance companies, which would drive prices down for the poor people, but would also help from the government with assistance for those who are low enough where they could not afford those driven down prices.
Is that all?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Next up is James Jamison.
In the view of James Jamison, healthcare is considered a privilege, not a right. We as Americans have our rights in the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You're not going to find healthcare as a right anywhere in any of the formal documents. Not to say that healthcare isn't important, but it's just not a God-given right. It's a privilege and it's of importance, so it needs to be accessible to those who need it. James Jamison believes that we have to open up the state lines and encourage competition to help lower administrative costs on the healthcare. With these expected lower prices, citizens who previously couldn't afford healthcare will soon be able to, allowing Americans to receive the level of healthcare they truly deserve.
Thank you, James. Now, McLovin.
Justin McLovin believes accessible, affordable, high-quality healthcare is a part of the American promise, a right for the American people. We believe everybody should have it, and our healthcare system should put people before profits, and Americans should be able to access public coverage through a public option, and those over 65 should be able to opt into Medicare. And everyone deserves to have a healthcare plan that protects them, and we cannot just leave citizens of our country without a plan to keep them healthy. That's all.
Thank you. All right, on to our next question.
Considering the recent gun violence and the fact that parts of our country have strongly conflicting views on whether there should be greater regulations of guns, what is your position on gun control, and how does it differ from your opponents? James Jamison, you're up first this time.
Our stance on gun control is to have it remain a Second Amendment freedom with the support of strong background checks. 80% of all firearm crimes are committed with people with illegal possession of firearm, so thinking there is a way to regulating the firearms from the bad guys having them by taking certain firearms away from the good guys that abide by the law is a ludicrous idea. There is a current war on drugs that is failing utterly, and thinking that by making something illegal will stop criminals is not reasonable logic. Thinking gun control will stop mass shootings is asinine. We already have laws against murder, yet that has not stopped anyone. Until a policy that proposes to enact a plan to prevent criminals from obtaining firearms, we will support the Second Amendment fully.
Thank you, Jamison. Now, McLovin.
We agree with the Republican view that we're being pro-gun, but we believe that there should be more regulations and restrictions for buying a gun. We want more thorough background checks, and we want all states to have background checks. And we want to protect our country and be able to protect ourselves. But we do want to close the gun show loophole to prevent guns from being brought into the wrong hands. And everyone has the right to own guns, but life is fragile. If someone's buying a gun, then they should be given a background check to see if they have any criminal offenses in their history.
Thank you. And finally, Lando.
McLovin said that they support closing the gun show loophole, but in fact, the gun show loophole only exists because they say that private sellers cannot sell or can sell to another person without doing a background check. But it is written in Chapter 18, Section 922, if the seller has reasonable suspicion of that person, they are required to get a background check on that person. Also, as our candidate Lando Free supports background checks and mental health checks because most large shootings are caused by people with mental health issues.
McLovin, do you want to respond to that? Clock's still ticking.
So you say that there's a law about it, but then if there's a law about it, then how is there such thing as a loophole?
Because the loophole is made up and it is just an excuse for the leftists to say that they have a reason to call it a gun show loophole and to further their agenda, because there's already a law, as I described, Chapter 18, Section 922, that says if they have reasonable suspicion that they need to get a background check. The law, or the gun show loophole is there, and it is put in place that private sellers can sell to one another without a background check for, it's meant to be there for family-to-family transfers, because they know those people, they trust those people, and they believe those people are good people and won't do harm with a firearm.
All right.
Moving on. Wars around the world have created a migrant crisis. Many of you are familiar with the war in Syria. What is the appropriate level of migration from Syria that the United States should allow? And how would you guarantee that those coming into our country from a region struggling with terrorism do not mean us harm? McLovin, you are on the clock.
We want to root out ISIS and other terrorist groups from our country, but not all Syrians are bad. We want to bring in more than we are now. We support a vetting process that would vet out bad ones, but it'd be extensive, and we want to let in more, so the vetting process would let us do that. And we want to bring together the moderate Syrian opposition, international community, and our regional allies to reach a negotiated political transition that ends Assad's rule. And it is imperative that we lead the international community in providing a greater humanitarian assistance to civilian victims of the war in Syria and Iraq, especially displaced refugees caused by ISIS.
Lando, you're up next.
Thank you for asking that question. We believe that the U.S. should allow 75,000 Syrian refugees in. Right now, you have a 0.00003% chance of being attacked by a foreign-born terrorist on U.S. soil. The issue isn't what these people will do to us if they enter the country. The issue is what we are doing to them by not allowing them in. In Syria, their infrastructure has collapsed, and 75% of citizens are without clean water, 95% are without sufficient health care, and 4/5 of the country are left living in poverty. There are currently 5.1 million refugees currently coming out of Syria that are experiencing the same thing. So why would you not want to let these people in?
All right, James.
Okay, so our stance on immigration is that the immigrants that are coming to the United States need to take the proper steps to become a United States citizen within the first year that they are here. The Syrian immigrants are coming to the United States because they are in a war and they don't know where else to go. We believe that there should be a certain number based on availability of housing for where these people are going in the United States, and that number that we put is 60,000. We are going to have a certain limit because it can't be an all or nothing type of situation. We are going to do background checks on all the people who express interest on coming to our country, though through legal methods, while devoting extra resources to keep those out who try to enter via illegal methods, as well as keeping track of those who enter and when they leave. We believe that amnesty towards those who have broken immigration laws only encourages future immigrants to enter
That's
the
your
country.
time, James. Sorry.
According to the Pew Research Center, 49% of Americans say they have at least tried marijuana. Some states have legalized it, others have legalized the medicinal use of with proper doctor approval. Other states claim marijuana is a gateway drug. What is your candidate's plan to handle this situation? Lando Freed, you are on the clock.
There's a big misconception around the use of medical marijuana. Many people think you're sitting there smoking pot just to make yourself feel better. That's not the case. Medical marijuana is comprised of a chemical called CBD. It's extracted from the marijuana plant, and it's a brain-altering chemical that can help with seizures, epilepsy, chronic pain, and many other harmful conditions. The other chemical called THC is what gives you the physical high and is contributed to the addictiveness of the drug. So when you use medical marijuana, there's no chance of you getting addicted to other drugs because you don't have the THC, which is addictive. You're only using the CBD, which helps your brain to get over these very painful conditions.
Jamison, you're up.
Our candidate supports medical marijuana uses only. Marijuana has been viewed as a gateway drug. However, there has been no proof that it has been directly related to harder drugs. There is a study that showed that 45% of marijuana users did later on in life use illicit drugs, and the most common drug that they used was heroin. There are 29 states now that have legalized marijuana, and 7 of which have legalized the recreational uses of it. We do not support the recreational uses of it because of the long-term effects that it has on the body. Our candidate is for the uses of medical marijuana because it helps with the...
Time. Sorry. And finally, McLovin.
We all agree.
That's it.
Hashtag same.
Thank you, McLovin.
Our next question. North Korea is a very hot topic right now. What should the U.S. do about North Korea's growing nuclear capabilities and threat? James Jamison, you are on the clock.
All right, so with North Korea, as I said, it's a hot topic right now. We got a nuclear program that's making threats at the United States. Our response to North Korea is providing economic sanctions. This should slowly choke out North Korea so they won't be able to gain the resources and stuff they had before. But this is going to be a last opportunity for them. If not, we're going to have to step in. We can't let terrorists come to our soils. We have to go meet them in their spots.
All right, what do you think, McLovin?
Yeah, this is obviously a very hot topic right now, and we want to do everything to contain North Korea, and especially press China to help contain them because they could have a big impact on them, and we want to protect our allied relationships with Japan and South Korea, and we would like to communicate with their capital, Pyongyang, and try to compel them to abandon their nuclear and missile programs.
Okay, Lando.
So, North Korea, it's a big problem. We want to see a diplomatic approach first. We don't want any war, we don't want any loss of life. Nobody wants that. But if they keep doing these missile launches, and might I remind you, they've launched 19 missiles in the past couple years over quite a few places that they weren't supposed to, we will be forced to strengthen our trade sanctions on oil and grain, which are 2 very important exports to North Korea, as well as keeping an eye on them even further. And if that doesn't work, we will take military action if we have to.
Thank you, Lando. For many people, acquiring health insurance has become an expensive proposition. Many can't afford it. Obamacare, created to fix this problem, isn't working. Insurance companies are dropping out and no longer participating in the program. Some Republicans want to end Obamacare, but offer no solutions. Some Democrats have called for the government to provide everyone insurance, but haven't explained how they would pay for it. Considering all of this, do you think everyone is entitled to health care, and what would you do to make sure it's affordable? McLovin, you are on the clock.
So as we said earlier, everybody is entitled to health care, and to do this, we want to tax wealthy businesses, people, and families to help our low-income families get the coverage they deserve. And how to afford it, we think we could repeal the excise tax on high-cost health insurance and find revenue to offset it because we need to contain the long-term growth of healthcare costs.
Okay, Lando.
Thank you. Lando Free's plan is to stop Obamacare's taxing of $1 trillion and use that to create large state budgets, which would aid the poor for their insurance purposes. And then there would also be a set amount for pre-existing conditions for those who have pre-existing conditions that can't get a good health insurance coverage or the premiums are too high. This is the net.
Thank you, Lando. James?
Okay, notice that they haven't really got in depth of what's really going to happen with the healthcare. So first of all, it is a privilege, as we said. And we want to open up state lines to help drive competition between the insurance and hopefully lower the overall premiums of people using it. And then over the next 10 years, the Affordable Care Act is expected to increase the national debt by $1.2 trillion. That's not acceptable. We've already got $19 trillion. That's for the entire of our country. So in replacement of Obamacare, James Jamison proposes that the federal government set up block grants, which are budgeted money that would help the states cover the insurance costs. Let's see. So Obamacare, it had some benefits. It helped some people. With these block grants, James Jamison hopes that they can help basically the poor people.
Time. Sorry.
These next questions are from the Special Interest Group, the RLS. The organization of the Right to Live and Serve have raised the issue of doctor-assisted suicide, and they have a strong stance. They believe it is the doctor's duty to help preserve life, not end it. However, there are 6 states currently that have some form of physician-assisted suicide. Would you support the national law preventing this in all 50 states? Lando Free, you are on the clock.
Thank you for asking. We do not like physician-assisted suicide. We would support a law that would prevent it in all 50 states because the criteria required to qualify for physician-assisted suicide is that they must have a terminal illness and their death must be avoidable. We hear stories all the time of people who have 3 months to live and then they go and live for like 13 years. How can we predict the future and say, you know, you're gonna die on this date at this time? And death is unavoidable for every single one of us in this room. We're all gonna die someday, so why should we be the ones playing God, deciding who, when, and where people die?
Hold your applause, please. Thank you. James, go ahead.
Okay, you said 6 of the 50 states are in it, so why should that apply to the whole country? We've still got 44 that are saying no, and there's definitely a reason for that. The types of physician-assisted suicide include 2 of them are non-voluntary and involuntary. Non-voluntary, they're in a coma, they don't know what's happening, so why should we be killing them if they don't even have a say? Involuntary, they're directly saying that they don't want to die, so why are we killing them? Physician-assisted suicide is completely unacceptable, and James Jamison does not stand for it.
Thank you. McLevin, sorry.
All right, and we believe in the voluntary action. With the patient diagnosed terminally ill with 6 or less months to live and approved by 3 doctors, they should have the right to end their life. These people are in pain, and not letting them choose is prolonging the inevitable. I'm sure most of them would even want to cut out the middleman, but they are constrained to the hospital bed, so it is their choice that they could choose.
You should assist us to live, not to die. It's our doctors that should save our lives, not
That's enough.
Moving on. The Organization of Right to Live and Serve believes strongly in every American's right to live and serve in the military. What are the candidates' stances on the recent hold on Trump's transgender military ban? James Jamison, you are on the clock.
Transgenders in the military right now are under the Obama administration. He allowed that their surgeries would be paid for the transitioning between genders, and we do not allow that. We would advise that we would repeal that policy so then all transgenders are able to serve in the military as long as they're passionate about serving for our country. But we do not accept that they can only serve in the military for the transitional surgeries.
Thank you. Penny, for your thoughts, McLevin.
First off, I'd like to say thank you to the RLS. Thanks, folks. Love you too. So we are for transgenders in the military. I mean, it's just logical, you know. Just kind of having these individuals and taking them out will cost us over, $4,726 per person. So just taking them out, you're kind of wasting military dollars that you've already spent. And also, there's an issue with mental illness. Last time I checked,
That's time. Thank you. All right, Lando Free.
Our position on transgenders in the military is the same as the military stance on transgenders in the military. The military has a stance that says if you have a mental illness that you are not allowed to serve in the military. This ranges all the way to conditions such as ADD, which is a very minor condition. If you have ADD, you're not considered active duty, you are not allowed to be active duty in the military. And transgenderism is a mental illness. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 41%. The average suicide rate in the country is 56%. Suicide rate is 10 times that of the regular community.
That's time. Thank you, Lando.
you all to silence. We will now move on to the unprepared questions. The candidates will be given 30 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to respond. We will begin with Lando. The Trump administration is attempting to make U.S. borders impassable to everyone without proper documentation. How do you plan to advance this project without making crossing the border from the U.S. too difficult for immigrants whose visas have expired?
Seconds. Okay, cut the music. Thank you. All right, you have 45 seconds to respond. Go ahead.
All right, so the Trump administration supports the laws that we already have in place regarding immigration, saying that there are certain requirements that a person has to meet in order to be able to be allowed into this country. And we support that, as well as Trump's administration's building a higher border, because we all know that illegal immigration is a problem. And the issue with people not leaving this country after their visas are expired, they are able to apply for a U.S. citizenship if they've been in the country for 5 years and can pass certain tests, like a civics test and a government test. And so if there is an issue with people not leaving this country when their visas are expired, it's because they don't meet those requirements to take the test. And so if that is the case, then we can create a bigger force, which would create more jobs to force these people out of our country.
Is that all?
Yes.
Thank you.
McLovin, during the past 50 years, global warming has continued to accelerate to an unprecedented level. Most scientists agree this is due primarily to human industrial factors. What policies does your candidate advocate to improve the situation without endangering the economy?
Time's up. All right, cut the music. You have 45 seconds.
As Democrats, we want to reduce the effects of climate change, and we want to protect America's natural resources, ensure the quality of the air, the land, the water, and all that for future generations. And we want to invest in more clean energy sources, and we want to address our biggest environmental challenges, paving the way to a more sustainable America.
Okay, thank you, McLovin.
James Jamison. The share of Americans who say race relations are bad in this country is the highest it's been in decades, much of it amplified by shootings of African Americans by police. So, how do you heal the divide?
Seconds. Okay, stop music. All right, James, you have 45 seconds.
Currently, the problem with the minorities and how they're expressing their feelings is basically that they feel like they're treated unfairly. But what they're proposing is that they're treating it more unfairly. They're getting benefits. They want certain rights that, like the affirmative action for colleges and stuff. They're expecting benefits because of their race. They feel like it's basically the opposite of racism. They're kind of putting themselves above the others. They're expecting to be different. But if they really wanted true equality, they'd stay the way it is.
Give the candidates a round of applause, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for coming out, and we appreciate the candidates. They did a great job. They made this an informative afternoon. Don't forget the election's on Tuesday, so make sure to check your emails. The polls close at 3 o'clock. And read the newspaper. The Everyday